Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's TIPS webinar, Why Citrix Cloud Migration is Easier Than Ever. My name is Sarah Queen, and I'm a Senior Manager on our Customer Success Management team here at Citrix, and your host for today's event. Today I'm joined by Brendan Lin, Customer Success Senior Enterprise Architect, and Amir Trujillo, Lead Customer Success Engineer. Both Brendan and Amir are on the front lines of our largest cloud migrations and are here to share their lessons learned and an exciting new tool available to support your cloud journey. Before I hand it over to Brendan, let me quickly cover a couple of housekeeping items. At the conclusion of the event, we will host a live Q&A segment to answer your questions. You're welcome to submit your questions throughout the session. Simply type your question into the Ask a Question window and click Submit. Also, we're recording this session and it will be available at the same link that you used to join today, in addition to the archive of our previous events. Finally, the slides are available for download from the Event Resources tab located along the top of the interface. All right, Brendan, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you to get us started.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Yep, during this webinar, my colleague Amir and I will be talking about Citrix Cloud migration strategies we regularly review with customers and new tools that'll make the transition faster and more successful for you. So during this session, we'll review a number of topics, starting with a Citrix Cloud overview and a summary of common architectures and scenarios for new and existing customers and what they're trying to accomplish from a business perspective and what they're trying to get out of a cloud migration. Second, we'll talk about Citrix Cloud migration paths and strategies, as well as tips we've learned from being part of the customer success organization and working with various customers along their journey. Last, we'll do a deep dive on the newly released Citrix Automated Configuration Tool for virtual apps and desktops, which is geared towards simplifying the administrator's life when shifting workloads to the cloud, something that we're excited to present on. Let's first start by talking about why Citrix customers are migrating to the cloud. As we work with many customers, we have the opportunity to interface every single day with many scenarios and customers which are looking towards the cloud to simplify their IT and enhance the user experience. Now, some key reasons to migrate to the cloud are to provide faster agility to meet business goals, such as in the case of business continuity and remote work. And in the past few months, cloud adoption has been on an extremely rapid rise, largely because cloud provides a much faster time to value and speed of deployment. Another benefit of Citrix Cloud is the reduced infrastructure and management with an evergreen platform. For example, some customers running older versions, like an LTSR version, such as 7.6 or 7.15, are at a decision point whether to perform that in-place upgrade to the next version or whether to shift the operating model entirely to cloud, where the infrastructure layer is continually up to date and running as a service. Public cloud is another big reason and is related to this version consideration. Moving forward past the 1912 LTSR version, Citrix Cloud will be the only solution in which to connect workloads to public cloud, such as Azure, AWS, and GCP. And lastly, from a user perspective, cloud provides additional features and functionality, such as a unified workspace to provide not just virtual apps and desktops, but single sign-on to SaaS apps, personal files, and additional employee productivity functions using micro apps. Along the lines of public cloud, we wanted to take a minute to highlight the recent expanded partnership between Citrix and Microsoft. Our latest joint offerings establish Citrix Workspace as a preferred digital workspace platform for Microsoft customers and Azure as the preferred public cloud for companies using Citrix solutions to enable people to work anywhere. Citrix continues to emphasize customer choice as IT trends towards a hybrid multiple cloud operating model. But for those of you who are looking towards Azure, this partnership and future solutions will bear even more synergies. In addition to Workspace, another element of this announcement is around Windows Virtual Desktop and multi-session Windows 10 capabilities using Citrix to extend the WVD capabilities. So using Citrix Cloud, customers can deliver Windows Virtual Desktop with Citrix Workspace as the preferred platform, fully integrated into all the other parts of Citrix Cloud subscription alongside all the on-prem, the mobile, and SaaS apps. Now that we've kind of reviewed why customers are moving to cloud, next I want to review some of the common Citrix deployments that we see and some scenarios that customers typically migrate from. This could entail things like Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop environment on-prem, running either LTSR or a current release version, which may or may not be supported. Typically, customers also deploy supporting infrastructure and features, including app layering or single image management through PBS or MCS, or profile management, for example. Remote access through Citrix ADC Gateway is also a common architecture component, particularly now with more users working from home. Additionally, some customers could leverage other Citrix products in the suite, such as Citrix Files or Endpoint Management. Finally, larger and more complex customers have multiple geo footprint or pod type architecture, which includes multiple Citrix sites aggregated through a single URL or multiple URLs even. While the picture on the right is simplified, it's typical to have several areas in which to manage the Citrix environment, all of which have to be supported, maintained, and updated. Before we get into the Citrix Cloud migrations, I also wanted to quickly provide an overview of what Citrix Cloud is. Like most companies, Citrix has embarked on a cloud journey, and our entire workspace services portfolio is available in the form of Citrix Cloud Services. This means individual products are available as a service for customers, such as the Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop service, or Gateway service, Endpoint Management Service, and others that you can see here. But the real value for this platform is that Citrix has put together an integrated portfolio that more holistically addresses the needs of today's hybrid and multi-cloud IT environment. For virtual apps and desktops, the service removes the need for a customer-managed control plane. This means no controllers to update and install, no database and architecting the requisite resiliency, no license server, studio or director, etc. In the diagram as shown here, the service components on the top portion would ordinarily reside on-prem. With Virtual Apps and Desktop service, Citrix would run these components in the cloud without needing the customer to perform the typical maintenance. Other benefits include a simplified architecture for customers that have multiple data centers, like in a multi-geo scenario, and hybrid cloud flexibility, and being able to tie into public clouds are additional benefits. And then finally, auto scale, which is a feature which intelligently powers off machines in order to save costs based on usage or based on a schedule. As we go into the migration strategy, we could divide it up into 3 high-level concepts: the planning of the migration, building out the platform, and finally, the actual user workload migration and innovation. From a planning perspective, what we want to do is understand business goals, such as what you're trying to achieve, whether it's operational cost savings, looking to onboard a new user group from an acquisition, etc. One part of this is determining the actual transformation you want to achieve through the migration. Should the transition be largely the same and seamless to users, where they access the same applications and configurations? Or is there a goal to address technical debt, maybe through OS upgrades or some other major change? Access and authentication mechanisms are also important aspects to the plan, which can affect how users interact with the system. And also, many customers have an ongoing cloud journey, so public cloud considerations and requirements are important. Next, building the platform for Citrix Cloud is as simple as registering for Citrix Cloud and installing cloud connectors and enabling and configuring the appropriate services. Once the platform is established, user workloads can be migrated on a per use case basis. Additional use cases and opportunities to provide solutions to the business can also be tackled. And through continual improvements and iterations, the migration process continues through leading practice validations and workflow optimizations. The last thing we want to highlight here, which we'll dive deeper into the later part of the presentation, is how the automated configuration tool can assist with speeding up that process. Now, a migration doesn't need to be one strict path or set of procedures. There are several layers to the migration path. Over in the next few slides, we'll go through one such example as a starting point. First, we start off with a basic virtual apps and desktop, including the ADC and StoreFront access tier on the top, the Citrix site and core infrastructure on the bottom left, and the virtual desktop agents on the right, which support individual use cases. Those use cases can be a mix of published applications or virtual desktops, and typically there's a grouping of VDAs or workloads to support different segments of the user base. There are likely additional complexities such as multiple sites or ancillary support technologies that you may use, but at a simplistic level, it looks kind of like this. The first step in the migration process is to activate the customer Citrix Cloud subscription and install Citrix Cloud connectors in a particular data center, or what we call a resource location. The Cloud connector, since it's installed on a domain join machine, facilitates communication to Active Directory such that we could publish specific resources to 80 groups and add machines. As a Citrix Cloud subscriber, you now have the access to the library of Citrix Cloud Services. Some of these services can even be integrated into the existing on-premise environment to quickly and simply realize some benefits. For example, Workspace environment management can be activated with agents installed on existing workloads without needing to set up a complete web infrastructure. Analytics can be integrated into the deployment to provide telemetry to the cloud. So the analytics machine learning engine can produce user experience scores or security risk profiles to better gain visibility into user performance and behaviors. And application delivery management can be tied into the existing Citrix ADC deployments to provide pooled licensing, centralized deployment and configuration and upgrades, and additional latency and usage monitoring. The highlight of this part of the migration is that customers can take on Citrix Cloud Services with little impact to existing user loads as administrators gain familiarity with Citrix Cloud and begin to take on some of the benefits. The next major step in the migration process is with the Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop service. The automated configuration tool is best leveraged here, which can export settings and configurations from all on-premises environments and then import it into Citrix Cloud. Amir is going to be diving into how this works and how it can be customized to each and every situation. At the end of this process, it's possible to fully populate the Virtual Apps and Desktop service with configurations such as catalogs, delivery groups, policies, and application settings. And we believe it's going to be a big help to ease the administration burden with migrations moving forward. The next part of the migration enables the seamless migration from the user perspective. First, we create a connection between StoreFront and Cloud connectors, aggregating resources from Cloud along with any existing seed from on-premise sites. Another StoreFront configuration called Resource Aggregation provides the deduplication of icons such that one icon called Outlook, for example, is displayed. Next, VDAs can be re-registered from on-prem delivery controllers to Cloud connectors. This can be done easily through a registry setting, through the VDA program installer, or a GPO, among other options. For larger catalogs that utilize a single image management solution, such as PBS or MCS, the re-registration can be done by modifying the base image and rolling out the update. Once the setting has taken effect, Any future application or desktop brokering will now be managed by Citrix Cloud. But in short, that's all it takes to migrate to Citrix Cloud. These migrations can be done on a per application or per use case by use case basis, but it's really up to you and alignment on business priorities. After VDAs are all re-registered to the cloud, then legacy on-premise environment can be decommissioned. Now, most customers are looking to Citrix Cloud to quickly enable additional use cases, or maybe even as part of an overall strategy to public cloud such as Azure, AWS, or GCP. For the last part of this phase migration, I wanted to discuss innovating and adding more use cases. For example, you could add a public cloud subscription as a resource location tied into Citrix Cloud to provide a single pane of management and access for users. This would involve installing a set of cloud connectors in Azure, for example, setting up VDAs such as Windows 10 multi-session using machine creation services. And another potential introduction of new technology here would be the Citrix Workspace and Gateway Services as an alternative access infrastructure. Workspace provides a cloud-based access infrastructure where users can log in and launch resources from a cloud.com address that you could customize to your business. You could think of Workspace as StoreFront in the cloud, except with additional features to provide a simplified user experience for apps, single sign-on to SaaS apps, and files. Remote access can additionally be provided through the Gateway service with its 19 or so global points of presence. And for customers who wish to control their traffic flow a little bit better, the ADC is an optional piece in cloud that can be tied into the ADM service and also Citrix Workspace. In conclusion, from walking through these diagrams, the cloud migration has a few parts. We can summarize it in number 1, opening up a Citrix Cloud account. 2, implementing some non-critical path items for supporting features on an existing environment. Number 3, converting existing workloads simply by re-registering VDAs to the cloud connectors. And then number 4, augmenting the solution through additional cloud capabilities, whether that's public cloud, workspace, SaaS apps, or some other Citrix service. I should also point out this is not a mandatory order, and the customer journey can depend on the circumstance. Like, did you just acquire a company and do you need to do some rapid onboarding? Well, then setting up a resource location and using Workspace service might be the best path to value. Or are you a healthcare customer and want to move slowly? Then it's easy to begin with non-critical workloads, which aren't the electronic medical record system, and then build upon that through a dev, test, QA, and production lifecycle, which Citrix Cloud can also support. In the next couple slides, we'll talk through a couple case studies and how these companies approach their migrations. The first customer here features a very large healthcare and medical supplies customer, which operates worldwide, which was over time built through acquisition. The previous Citrix environment provided remote access for about 20,000 concurrent users across more than 12 on-prem Citrix farms and sites across various versions of supportability across multiple Active Directories. The organic growth resulted in several access URLs, operational complexity, and the buildup of some technical debt. This customer looked at Citrix Cloud as a way to simplify the user experience, consolidate data center in a major hybrid cloud initiative, and improve supportability by level setting to a consistent version powered by Citrix Cloud to provide the evergreen platform. While this case study falls under the realm of very complex environment, I'd say, the key takeaway is that Citrix Technologies provided the flexibility to successfully migrate to Citrix Cloud. During the migration process, they created new workloads in Azure and GCP to achieve some quick wins amidst the COVID-19 pandemic and rush to work to provide remote work capabilities. And Workspace and Gateway Service were critical to this initiative to provide quick and secure remote access without additional infrastructure. Existing workloads were also registered against Citrix Cloud, largely for those application backends which stayed on-prem and could not move to cloud. StoreFront aggregation was also used to provide a seamless user experience for the existing users such that they didn't need to be tied or directed to a separate URL that they were not familiar with. Finally, they incorporate additional services such as performance analytics for better visibility, workspace environment management for faster login times, and Citrix Files integration. The end result was a very rapid adoption and migration of the user base, although to an extent it was accelerated due to the global pandemic. For this next case study, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Mir, who's going to take it from here.
Thank you, Brendan. For the case study number 2, we have a financial services customer. To give you a quick overview, they operate different types of businesses, including banking, pharmacy, and retail stores, all of them with different subdivisions. In addition to that, this customer is constantly acquiring new companies for the book of services. So right now they have 3,000 users, 2 main data centers, and a mix of Citrix versions. So now you can imagine the complexity of the Citrix environment. We're talking about multiple sites, hundreds of virtual apps and desktops, and the administration from different consoles. So from that point, the customer decides to centralize and standardize all the Citrix sites from the on-premise to the cloud environment. The success team engaged with the customer, reviewed the adoption plan, and proposed the use of the automated configuration tool to ease this migration. And from that time, this tool was on private tech review, so was a great learning experience. Long story short, in order to have a controlled process, we migrated by business unit. We performed some tests on development environment first with different applications, machine catalogs, and users. And to do that, we utilized the configuration files to export all the components to Citrix Cloud. Honestly, it was a great experience. We helped the customer to perform the migration process by reducing the time and effort that always represents a lot of time doing a manual migration, as you know. Currently, we are actively working to complete the migration of the development environment because it's a huge environment, and in a couple of weeks, we'll start planning the production environment, exactly the same way as we did with the development one. So here, the important thing is that the automated configuration tool gives you the flexibility to manipulate all these configuration files the way you want to migrate. You can do it on stages, you can migrate on different phases. It doesn't matter if you're using machine creation services, provisioning services, manual deployment. With this tool, this customer had the opportunity to test before going to live migration. Now, it's time to talk about this automated configuration tool. And as you can see, in the case we just discussed, the tool was a key factor in the migration. We saved time, we helped the customer on the daily basis, and also we were able to identify some kind of possible issues that could be transported or migrated to the cloud. So it was a win-win situation in that scenario. You know, the automated configuration tool right now is on public tech review, and we are happy to have it here for you and start working with that and give us your feedback. And maybe at this time, you might be asking, what is this tool for and how can it help me? And let me tell you, the tool is designed to help you to automate the migration of virtual apps and desktops configuration from multiple on-premise sites to the Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop service hosted on Citrix Cloud. Or another use case for the tool is you can migrate from one cloud to another inside Citrix. To give you an example, you can use the tool to leverage a test or stage an environment to production, or maybe a site expansion, or maybe another use case is to build up a disaster recovery site. So you get the configuration files and you use them to whatever you want to do. This is everything about infrastructure as with configuration files. Also, you have full control of the configuration files. This provides full customization and actions such as export, import, merge, backup, and so forth. So also you can run the tool multiple times. You decide what you want to migrate. And the following diagram, let me give you a deeper explanation of what happens behind the scenes when you use this tool. The automated configuration tool is a Citrix PowerShell SDK that you install on any domain joined virtual machine. The configuration as a code tool discovers your on-premise environment and creates files that contain the configuration of each component, including machine catalogs, delivery groups, applications, policies, and more. Then you can use those files to migrate a complete environment or individual components depending on your needs and use case. For example, by geolocation or site, by business unit, specific applications, or so forth. So far, we've discussed what the automated configuration is and how it works. And maybe this is the first time that you hear about it, or maybe you're already using it to migrate your environment to cloud. And I want to show you in 4 quick steps a summary of the migration process. First, your cloud environment may be new, or it's something that you already started to work with. Maybe playing with the tool, maybe doing some manual migration to the cloud environment. That's perfectly supported. You run the tool, export all the configuration files. You have your YAML files with all the properties of each component, and you are ready to go. The configuration tool uses these files to import the configuration to Citrix Cloud. It discovers the site, it starts sending all the information, property by property. You can manually modify these files. And finally, you get all that information on your Citrix Cloud environment. It is easy, it doesn't take too much time, and it will save you a lot of work. Now, let's review the prerequisites to use the tool. And we'll need just a couple of things from both sides, from your on-premise infrastructure and the cloud environment. In one hand, from the on-premise environment, we need 2 main things: .NET version 4.7.2 install and the zone name. And sometimes, that's a recommendation for you to have an inventory of all your infrastructure components just to have a control migration and be sure that what you're migrating at this point. And in the other hand, from the cloud environment, we need to install the cloud connector first. This will create a resource location in the cloud. And as best practice, we recommend to have 2 cloud connectors at least per resource location. And last but not least, the customer ID, application ID, and client secret. And that information is going to be available on your cloud console. And I'm going to show you how to do it. Finally, before going to our demo, I'd like to review with you all the supported configurations that we have with the tool on the current version. Remember that it is on tech review, and the more feedback we get, the better results we have. And it's for real. Your feedback is very important for us, and it is a key player on the development of the tool. So that what you can do with the tool nowadays is to migrate your virtual apps and desktops environment from on-premise to cloud or cloud to cloud. No matter if you use PBS, machine creation services, or manual deployment for your resources. That includes machine catalogs, Citrix policies, tags, application groups, and so forth. So I could spend a few minutes talking about each property that can be migrated, but I'll let you take a look to the detailed documentation available now. We have the POC guide, Success Center, with FAQs and leading practices and more. Here, a tip for you now is that we're talking about all these components. And remember that there's a dependency between each of them. For example, if you want to migrate applications, first you need to migrate the delivery group and the machine catalog related to it. This happens exactly the same on on-premise deployment and in the Citrix Cloud. If your scenario is a provision services environment, the tool, the automated configuration tool, will ask you for the admin credentials for your provision services server. And this is just in order to be able to gather all that configuration from your previous environment and be able to get that information for the configuration files. You can enter those credentials on the security YAML file that the migration tool creates for you. And last but not least, if you're using machine creation services, it is supported as well. The only thing that you have to do here is manually create the machine catalogs, and that's it. You don't have to do anything else. Once you create the machine catalog, you leave the rest to the migration tool. Same process, you run the tool, it imports the configuration files to your Citrix Cloud, and you are all set. Now, let's move to our demo. During the demo, I'm going to migrate an on-premise environment with the machine catalogs that provide access to published applications, desktops, and remote PCs. Also, different provisioning methods to show you the flexibility to integrate your on-premise environment to Citrix Cloud. And last but not least, I'm going to migrate the principal configuration components like applications, Citrix policies, machine catalogs, and more. So if you're ready, let's move on to the demo.
All right, first thing first, let's download and install the automated configuration tool from Citrix Downloads. Go to the website. There's the MSI file and a guide with general information of its comments and features. In addition to that, a link to access the proof of concept guide that will walk you through the configuration as well. Once we have the file, we run the installation wizard. Just a couple of clicks and we are all set. Finally, let's validate our installation. Let's go to Control Panel, and under Add and Remove Programs, we'll see the tool listed as Citrix Automated Configuration PowerShell. Perfect. We just installed the tool, and now it's time to run it for the first time and export the current state of our on-premise infrastructure. So just right-click, run it as an administrator, and we're going to type export cvets to file. We can use the tab to autocomplete all through. What's going to happen right now is that the tool is discovering all the components and configuration on the on-premise environment, and with all this information it creates the configuration files. When the file completes the process, it creates a folder under documents called Citrix, and inside of it the autoconfig folder, which contains all the YAML files with the configuration of our on-premise infrastructure. As you can see, we have two files that are the most important for the initial configuration: the customer info and the zone mapping file. For the customer info, we require the customer ID, the client ID, and the secret. I'm going to show you how to get it. And the zone mapping. Here we're going to enter our zone name from our on-premise infrastructure and the resource location name from our cloud environment as well. Let's start with the initial configuration of the tool, and first with the customer info file. Here we need customer ID, client ID, and client secret. On the Cloud Console, go to Identity and Access Management and move to the API Access tab. Here we can find the customer ID, and also we're gonna create the secure client. We just have to enter a friendly name for us and hit Create Client. Citrix is gonna create the secure client and the key that we're gonna use in our customer info file. A tip here for you: get a copy, download it, and keep it in a safe place, because this is the only time that you have access to the secure key. Let's move to enter all that information we got to the customer info file. Just edit it and enter. You can do a copy paste for that and you are all set. Now let's move to the zone mapping YAML file to complete our process. On the same console, on the hamburger menu, go to resource locations, and here is where we're going to find the name. In this case, it's my resource location. Now let's move to our on-premise Studio console. Under configuration, go to zones, and there you can find the zone name. In this case, it's primary. Let's go back to the YAML files. Let's edit the zone mapping file and enter the name of our on-premise infrastructure zone and our cloud resource location. This is all the information we need to complete our initial configuration. Now I'm going to proceed with the migration of the machine catalogs, and I'm going to use the merge command. And the great thing here is that it allows me to specify the name of the machine catalog that I specifically want to migrate. This is one of the use cases where I want to migrate by business unit or by company or any specific testing that I want to perform. So as you can see, it doesn't take too long. We are on real time here, and at the end of the process I'm going to get a log file with all the transactions that happen, and in case any error, a recommendation to fix it. Nothing else to do. I just have to refresh my cloud console and the resources are going to be available right now. Now let's migrate the delivery groups. And remember, we have full control of the configuration files, so we can migrate everything on a single shot or by use case. So again, we're going to use merge, and I will specify the name of the delivery group that I want to migrate. The configuration tool starts getting all the information from the configuration files and send that to the Citrix Cloud. It will ask me if I want to do it. Yes, and the process begins. It doesn't take too much time. Again, start discovering all the information, go to the configuration files and set everything for me. So far, we've migrated machine catalogs, delivery groups, and now it's time to migrate applications. And think about this and how flexible is the migration with the automated configuration tool. Maybe you have hundreds of applications and a mix of virtual desktops, and that's really complicated, and you just want to test a couple of them. And here is where you're going to be able to specify the delivery group that you want to use for your migration. For this use case, I'm just going to migrate a few applications related to a single delivery group, so I can perform some tests with end users and be ready to migrate to my production environment after that. As you can see, it doesn't take too long. Just getting all the information from the configuration files. It just verified the communication, and the applications are being added one by one and located on the application folder. I got the log file from the transactions and just refresh my console and the applications are going to be ready to be published to my new testing environment on Citrix Cloud. Last but not least, I'm going to show you how to migrate Citrix policies to your cloud environment. Again, I'm going to use merge to import all my policies from on-prem to the cloud environment using the configuration files. And as you can see, there is a dependency between components. First, migrate machine catalogs, then delivery groups, and from that point you can migrate your policies because those policies are filtered by any of those ones. So that's a recommendation, and in the meantime you can see it's pretty straightforward. The policies are now on my cloud environment.
Now that we finished with our demo, let's start over again. All right, now let's talk about a few takeaways of the automated configuration tool. First, the automated configuration tool is a PowerShell SDK that allows you to import and export the configuration files from on-premise to cloud or cloud to cloud. And also, as in every PowerShell SDK, you can run get help to get all the list of the supported features and some examples. The second point is that the tool stores the configuration files in YAML file format. And from this point, you have full control over them. You can add or remove properties, you can comment out components and so forth. So you can deploy phase migrations anytime. The third point is also it provides backup and restore capabilities. So in case you want to back up the current state of your environment, you can do that for sure. As mentioned before, you can perform a new migration or build up a new disaster recovery environment with that information. And last but not least, it can be rerun multiple times. So you are not tied to run the migration tool just a single time. You can use the tool multiple times on different phases. You can migrate by business unit, by department, by machine catalog. You have flexibility and control of all your infrastructure. Now, I'm going to pass it over to Brendan back.
Thanks, Amir. As we wind down this webinar, we want to direct folks to some great online resources for more in-depth info. We realized that over the course of this session, we could only go so deep on the topics as it relates to migration, but it's our aim to steer customers towards a path of success, and to that end, great sources of information. Firstly, Cloud Success Center is an interactive planning tool which can generate tailored success plans by inputting information about your environment. It'll help build up step-by-step instructions to install and configure components and list out a set of guides based off of your environment. The automated configuration tool, as Amir walked through, provides the PowerShell capability to import and export configurations, and this link directs to a detailed walkthrough of the process as well as the tool itself. The Citrix Tech Zone, if you haven't been there already, is a great resource full of reference architectures and deployment guides, largely written from contributors with field experience, which is great. And finally, the end user adoption kits are pre-built guides geared towards end users, such as how to install Workspace app, how to access and launch apps, how to navigate through the resources delivered through Citrix. And this is particularly useful for customers looking at the new Workspace user interface, and it could help ease the transition for users. And for those who are interested, Citrix has put together several remote work quick start packages delivered by Citrix Consulting. We highly recommend customers leverage consulting when embarking on a cloud migration project to ensure that you're creating the best solution for the individual scenario. And these remote work Quick Start packages are designed to be accelerated and focused on driving foundational success, which a customer can build on, whether it's an assessment to provide recommendations, a pilot program focused on virtual apps and desktop service and Citrix Cloud, or incorporation of the full suite of services through the Citrix Modernization Quick Start. So contact your Citrix representative for details, and there's a promotion valid through the end of the year on these programs. That concludes our webinar. At this time, we'll pass it off to Sarah.
Awesome. Thank you, both Brendan and Amir. That was a super overview, and I'm personally excited to see the simplification of our cloud journey and all the new tools that we have available to support both our customers and partners. As we move into our live Q&A segment, please take a moment to drop your questions into the Ask a Question window and make sure to click Submit. I know we're running up close to the time, but we'll certainly keep the lines open and do our best to address as many of these questions as possible.